Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. As you could probably see by today's video title, we're going to be going through the books that I read in the month of May. I'm going to put my genre breakdown here, and then we'll go over some quick facts about how my reading month went. I read 27 books this month, which is the most I've read all year. I did have a 24-hour readathon in there, so that is why I had a little bit more than normal, which was 10,449 pages. 5 books were Kindle Unlimited, 22 were physical, and I had an average rating of 4.1, which is also the highest rated month I've had so far this year. So very excited for that. I read a lot of good books this month, but it also feels like a very long month, so bear with me while I go through all of these books that I read. I'm going to try to keep it brief. I say that every month. I really do try to keep it brief. But if I did a book in a vlog, I'm not going to talk too much about it. You can find the vlogs in my reading vlogs. I have a whole playlist of them, and the books that I read that I don't talk too much on will all be... The book I started the month with was The Atlas Paradox by Olivia Blake. This is the second book in the Atlas 6 trilogy. It picks up where the last one left off. There is a cliffhanger at the end of the first book, and this is a very much like dark academia with a touch of fantasy kind of vibe. There are 6 students that are living in this house, and they're vying for a position in the society, and they're betraying each other, and you're finding things out about like their true alliances and their powers and their histories and everything that's going on with this society that maybe doesn't seem up and up. I can't talk too in depth about the plot of this book because you do have a first book in this, and that will give away what happened in that. But we follow Libby, Nico, Tristan, Callum, Rena, and Parisha. So those are our like main characters that we follow in this, and it is considered fantasy. I gave this a 3.75 and a 1 on the spice level. The next 2 books I'm going to talk about were in a vlog where I read my highest and lowest rated Goodreads books. And the first one was my lowest rated, which is Cursed by Thomas Wheeler, and there are illustrations in this by Frank Miller. This is considered a fantasy. I don't know if this is like YA, but it was essentially a King Arthur retelling. I have a lot of thoughts about this book and what I did and really did not like about it, and I do talk about that more in depth in the vlog for this, but it is like a very loose retelling of King Arthur with our main character supposedly being the Lady of the Lake. That's all I can really say about it. We follow Nimue, Morgan, Arthur, and Merlin is also in this as well. So Morgan is obviously Morgana, and Arthur is Arthur, and Merlin is Merlin. But they all do have a little bit different personalities than what you're used to in like the normal lore of King Arthur. I ended up giving this a 2.75 and a half on the spice. It was really not my favorite book. It had a lot of potential and it just fell flat for me. However, my highest rated Goodreads book was Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, the second book in the Six of Crows duology, and God did I love this book. We're still following our main characters from the first book, Kaz and Nej, Nina, Jasper, Waylon, and Matthias. And this picks up again where the first book left off, where they completed their heist and now they're moving on. And I just freaking loved this book. I wish I could talk more about it. I wish I did a spoiler vlog. The dynamics of these characters and their relationships and what happens. And Kaz's mind, I talk about this in the vlog, is like Sherlock Holmes, Benedict Cumberbatch edition, like how he thinks through things and how that show showed his brain. That's how Leigh Bardugo writes him, and I loved it. So highly recommend this duology. I have read the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and that was good, but this trilogy was bounds and leaps above that trilogy. So highly recommend. You do not need to read Shadow and Bone to read this. That's up to you. I'm not going to say one way or the other, but this duology was phenomenal. I gave this 5 stars. This was my 4th 5-star of the year, and just a half on the spice. There's really very minimal spice in this. Next up was a little novella, Powerful, from the Lauren Roberts Powerless duology. This is 1.5, so it falls in between books 1 and 2, but it's not considered an entire book. It follows Adina, who is Peyton's best friend that's in the first book, and it's her love story, and this was beautiful and heartbreaking and just so wonderfully written. I really enjoyed this. It was a very quick read. It's only like 100 and some pages, I think. Just over 200 pages. I gave this 4 stars and 1 spice. I can't talk again too much about this because it will spoil Powerless, but if you read Powerless and you loved it, I'm sure you've probably already read this, but if not, pick this up before Reckless comes out because I think it's a really good transition point from reading Powerless and then getting ready for that new next book. Then I picked up The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This is another one of her STEM romances. This is my second one of hers. And this is a Reylo fanfic kind of rewrite thing from what I've heard. And I'm big on Star Wars, as I've said in the past. And I love Kylo Ren. I know he's the villain. I don't care. I love him. I love Adam Driver. And this is about a PhD student and a professor, I think he was. And it's like a fake dating kind of situation. And he's like putting his career on the line to help her out of a situation that she gets herself in that causes them to have to fake date. And you find out things about them and how they really met and they're real meet cute and everything kind of unfolds. And Olive doesn't really know what's going on, but Adam does. So that dynamic was kind of fun because you do get the idea of both of their feelings on the matter. So I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4-star and a 2 on the spice. So like I said, Olive and Adam are main characters, fake dating, STEM romance. Really enjoyed this. Ali Hazelwood so far has been excellent to me. Not a 5-star yet. She has a new book coming out. I still have to read Love Theoretically and Bride and Check and Mate. And then she also has Not in Love coming out I think in June, so really soon. So I will also be picking that up when it comes out. I picked up Ninth House, also by Leigh Bardugo. So this is my second book by her this month. And this is a dark academia, fantasy, magical-esque kind of situation where it's the underground societies at Yale that are being followed. And there are these societies at other Ivy Leagues as well, but this one in particular follows the ones that happen to be at Yale. And this is the first in the Alex Stern right now. It's a duology. I do not know if there's going to be a book after Hellbent. But we're basically following her, and she gets accepted into the society because she can see what they call grays, which are dead people. And that's a whole interwoven part of the plot and why it's important for them to be able to see it because of the types of rituals and things that go on in these societies. So she is kind of a caretaker of all of the societies. She's not involved in one in particular. And she has a guy that trained her, and then she lives with, I think, the girl that trained her trainer. It's a lot of occult. You find out about her past and why she is the way she is and how she found out about her powers. And it's dark. It's hard to get into, but once I got into the book, I really enjoyed it. And I am looking forward to Hellbent because this did kind of end on a cliffhanger because there's an underlying story going on that it does not talk about on the back. I did check that before I started blabbing. But I really do enjoy that storyline, and that was the cliffhanger going into the second book. There are some weird kind of gross things that happen in this book, so do check your trigger warnings before reading it if you're easily grossed out, I guess I would say. But overall, not what I was expecting, but I still really enjoyed this book. I'll probably end up saving Hellbent for a fall read based on the vibes that this book gave me. I ended up rating this 4.25 and half on the spice rating. Our main characters: Alex, Darlington's her trainer, and then Dawes is his trainer, and then Turner, who is a cop that they deal with that kind of helps cover up the stuff that's going on that is happening in these societies. Next, I read Influence by Sarah Shepard and Lilia Buckingham. These are the authors of the Pretty Little Liars series. And this book follows Delilah, Jasmine, Fiona, and Scarlett, and they're 4 influencers that live in the LA area. So Delilah is a newer influencer. Her family just moved to LA. She's making her mark in the whole situation with growing a brand and growing her fame and all of that. And she meets the other 3 influencers at an event right when she gets there and gets quickly swept into their circle. Then one of the girls goes missing and they don't really know if she's missing, she's dead, whatever. They don't know what happened. So then the rest of the book is them kind of trying to figure out what happened the night that this girl went missing, because they were all present but not really aware of what was going on. And there's a love triangle situation, and it's just a messy, drama-filled read. It was an interesting take on a thriller. It wasn't a typical thriller that I read. It fell kind of flat at the end because I think it was pretty obvious what happened. So that's why I didn't rate it maybe as high as I could have. But it is considered a thriller. I rated it 2.75 and a half spice. The cover is really cute, minus the fact that the sticker didn't want to come off, but those are little emojis. I don't know if you can see that make up the picture. So that was really cool. But it did feel kind of juvenile, They were doing a lot of stupid, petty stuff to each other. I think that was the point of the book, though. So, not my favorite, but was definitely an interesting read. And I got it at Ollie's for like $3, so it's not like I was that upset about it. And the cover is just really cool, so. And then this next few books start my TBR vlog, I think, that I did the past month. And the first one was Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This follows Liz, Libby, and Wes, who are next door neighbors. And they constantly like bicker over who gets the parking spot outside in their little cul-de-sac area. And it's very obvious that Wes is crushing on her and she's just not getting it. But then this kid comes back into town from their childhood that lived on their street and they used to play with that Liz had a huge crush on. That's Michael. And she tries to get Wes to help her have Michael view her as something other than like little Liz that used to live down the street from them. They're all in high school, like senior year, I think, because they're talking about prom. So Wes is trying to help Liz make herself attractive and like desirable. They start like, I wouldn't say fake dating, but he definitely start like kind of laying it on thick to see if they can make Michael jealous enough to want Liz and make him see her as girlfriend potential. And then obviously it's a romance. They end up falling in love and things go from there. There is going to be, I want to say it's like Nothing Like the Movies is coming out, which is the second book in this. I didn't even know this was going to be a series because it is still following Liz and Wes. It's just following them in college, so that should be exciting. But the biggest thing about this is that like Liz and her mom had passed away, but Liz and her mom used to watch all of the romantic comedies and like movies and stuff together. So she's big on romance and big on making things like the movies. And Wes knows that, and he does kind of like put these little comments in there and stuff. And that's how you really know that he does care about her and he does like her, because he knows that she loves these movies and he tries to relate things to them as the whole book goes along. So this was really adorable. It is YA, so it was very clean. I gave it a 4.25 and half on Spice, but my first Lynn Painter, and it definitely will not be my last Lynn Painter book. Next up in that vlog was The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. This follows three sisters who were separated when they were younger and they're living separate lives now. And at the beginning of the book, they all kind of meet in this town. And because this like magical thing happens that one of them ends up setting off accidentally. So you find out what really happened in their past that has kept them apart. And the youngest sister, James Juniper, I think they call her June, she's like a spitfire, wants to be involved, wants to like cause a ruckus about everything. She joins the women's movement because the women in this time, because this is like the early 1900s, late 1800s, they're fighting for their rights to vote and just be considered actual humans. So she joins the women's movement, trying to make it a witches movement, because witches were obviously like banished after Salem. So there's like an old Salem and a new Salem kind of thing in here. And between James Juniper, Agnes Amaranth, and Beatrice Belladonna, those are their names, there's this whole thing about like, if you know witch stuff, you know like the maiden, the mother, and the crone, I think is the three of them. So there's a lot of like talk about that in reference to them, but also like reference to the actual maiden, mother, and crone. And they're trying to uncover this dark secret that's going on in their town, and women are being punished for stuff that's really not them. There's just like a lot going on in this book. The underlying story was mainly about like these sisters and sisterhood in general, because they're allowing other women to be more open and more upfront about what's going on in their lives. A lot went on in this. I do talk about it more in the vlog. It is hard to explain, so you'd have to like kind of follow through with it. It was a little slow to begin. I ended up giving this 4 stars and half on the Spice. There is a little bit of love story in there, but it's not the main plot at all. But I did enjoy it. It was a little bit too long. I felt like it could have been shorter and I probably would have liked it more, but overall I did enjoy the story a lot. Then I read Invisible Girl by Lisa Joel. This is my second Lisa Joel book, and I have not particularly been a fan. And my book club that I just joined has chosen None of This Is True for our next book club pick, and I'm kind of like, do I skip this month? I don't know. Do I give her a third try, and if I don't like that book, I move on? Not sure. My biggest issue with Lisa Joel is that she touches on very, very uncomfortable topics in ways that I don't like in her books. I don't want to give away, I think I might talk a little bit about it in the vlog, but I don't want to give away too much of what happens in this. But essentially, there's this like neighborhood where these girls keep getting assaulted, and then a girl goes missing from this neighborhood, and there's a guy who has just been accused of like sexually harassing students. He's a professor, so he's on leave from work, and he's kind of a miserable old, nobody loves me, nobody, it's an incel. That's what it is. That's what they call him. That's the whole part of it. So that was really uncomfortable to like deal with the inner workings of his brain and all of that stuff. And then you've got this family across the street and their secrets, because they've got like a daughter and a son, and they both have secrets, and they both know things maybe that the parents don't understand. And then you're following the mom as well. I don't feel like this was a very thrilling book. It was considered a thriller, but it just made me really uncomfortable more than anything. And the story was very predictable, which is also what I would say about The Girls in the Garden, which was the other book I read by her. So I gave this 2.5 stars and half on Spice, because there is some like weird talk about some things. But yeah, that's the premise. They're just trying to find this girl that went missing, and how everybody's connected to her and her disappearance, which it ended weird. Yeah, it kind of took a turn. Like, it was a predictable ending for the one person, but in general, like, it was just weird. I don't know. I have weird feelings about this. It was a book I read. That's what I keep saying when I don't really know how to feel about books. Then I read The House of Marion by J.L. and quickly found out that this is not a standalone fantasy novel like I thought it was, but it is going to be at least 2 books, and it is about these society. How did I describe this? There's like 4 houses, kind of like Hogwarts, but instead of all of the houses being in one school, they're scattered around the United States, and you can belong to any of these houses, and you have to prove your magic by manifesting it, and it manifests in either like a diadem or a mask, and depending on how it manifests and how large it is and everything shows like how strong you are and what type of magic you have. And our main character has a secret because she kind of has magic that is forbidden, so she's trying to hide that when her diadem ends up manifesting itself. And then after that you have to like hone your powers, and then you have to show that you have control of your powers. There's like different aspects to being accepted into this society, each of the societies, and there's a lot of secrets going on. She's trying to join the society to keep her and her mother safe, and her and her mom get separated at the beginning of the book, and she's trying to communicate with her like, this is what I need to do to be safe. And there is a love story between her and the guy that's training her in this, and it is really cute, and I really enjoyed this book. For picking it up on a whim at Target when it was on sale, I really did enjoy it. And the next book comes out in September, I think, and it's called Shadows of Pearl, which is another one of the houses. So there may be 4 books. It may be like a Crescent City situation where there's 4 houses and they do 4 books. I don't know yet. Didn't even know this wasn't the only one when I started reading it. Highly enjoyed this book, so much more than I thought I would. I gave it 3.75, which is still high for me, and 1 on the Spice level. And Quell is our main character, and Jordan is the main male love interest, and they will more than likely still be the main characters, I would think, in the next book. So I'm looking forward to that. I plan on picking that up when we go on vacation in October, because I have bought so many books lately. I do not need any more books right now. So I'm going to hold off on getting that one right when it comes out. But gorgeous cover, really interesting book, really interesting type of a magic system. Even the under part, like the naked hardcover, is beautiful. I definitely recommend picking this up if YA fantasy is your thing. I think this was a very interesting read. Not like the best fantasy ever, but definitely one that I think would hold most people's attention and be enjoyable to most people. Then I started my Kindle books for a week vlog, and I started that with Zodiac Academy: The Awakening, which is the first of 12 books in the Zodiac Academy by Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. And this follows 2 twin sisters, Tori and Darcy, and then there's 4 guys that it follows as well. Seth, Max, Caleb, and Darius, and then Orion is like one of the professors at the Zodiac Academy that the girls deal with. This was such a messy, such a dramatic, like, I shouldn't have loved it, but I couldn't put it down kind of book. It was overly sexualized without being like spicy, if that makes sense. But these girls were raised in the human world, but they're actually like Fae royalty, and they were given up by their parents to the human world and exchanged for human children. Like they did that, I forget what they call it when like Fae parents drop their kids off and then take the human babies, but that's what happened to them to keep them safe. And after their parents' death, these 4 families that those boys are in kind of take over ruling together, and then Orion comes and finds the girls when they turn 18, and he takes them back to the school, the academy, to learn their magic, but they're so far behind everybody else that they're just kind of being picked on and taken advantage of. and these guys are just making their lives miserable because they don't want to give up the power that their families have to these girls because they're the rightful heirs. And it's so messy and so overly sexualized, but so addicting. So if you want a soap opera, messy reality TV type book, I feel like this series is going to be it. I ended up giving this book a 4 stars, which is shocking to me. And then at 1.5 on the Spice, it did pick up a little towards the end. And I have seen that the rest of the books are actually rated higher than this one. So I'm hoping I just continue liking it and they continue getting better. And they all are on Kindle Unlimited last I checked. So if you have that, you don't even have to buy all 12 books. You can just read it on there. I will continue to do that at some point. I have a few other series I'm trying to finish up before. And I made the mistake of starting way too many series during this vlog. Because the next book I read was Indigo Ridge by Devney Perry. And that's the first book in the Eden series, which is a crime romance interconnected standalone kind of series. Small town. We follow the new sheriff in town who is female, as well as one of the Eden brothers who is like the founding family of the town. And beginning of the book, there's a death, and Winslow, our main female character, thinks there's more to it than a suicide, which is what everybody assumes it is. But Griffin keeps telling her, like, you can't be, I don't know, stirring the pot and stuff. Like, we've had suicides here before, it happens. And she's like, this is a small town. Like, how many suicides have you had? And he tells her, and she's like, something else is going on here. So then that's the underlying story that she's trying to solve really throughout the entire book. And it does cause a little bit of animosity between the two of them. They had an instant attraction at the beginning and both thought that the other was an out-of-towner at a bar the first night they met, so they hooked up. And then the next day, when her grandfather's the mayor and obviously his dad is like one of the founding families, they take them both to lunch to meet and they go, oh crap. So there is that like sexual tension between the two of them. There's that instant attraction. They don't ever really try to fight their feelings for each other, but at the same time, like while they're having a relationship, there is a lot that is like driving them apart because they're disagreeing on things, because he's like, you're still an outsider. I don't care what you think. That's not what's happening. Very good drama, crime, romance book. Enjoyed. Will continue this series as well. I did just finish the Chestnut Springs series, which I'll talk about later. Now I can kind of start this as my next small town romance and continue that. The next book I read was Addicted to You by Kristen Becker Ritchie, which is the first book in the Addicted/Calloway Sisters series. And this follows Lily and Lauren, Lily and Lo, they call them. Lily's addicted to sex, Lo is addicted to alcohol, and they live together. They've been friends for years, and they're fake dating to kind of help each other keep their secrets from their families, and also kind of help each other through their addictions, but all they're really doing is enabling each other. So they strike up a deal that they think is going to help them, and they're fake dating, but they end up real dating, and it ends up causing more problems. They truly, truly care about each other. So like this book was heartbreaking because you're just seeing them go through so much shit that I don't know how they still wanted to talk to each other at the end. But I think the fact that they're both so broken makes them more understanding of the other situation. And I think the series is going to rip my heart out. But I do think this is the kind of book that I will gravitate towards when I want that kind of a feeling. I don't know when I'm going to pick the next one up. Again, the whole series is on Kindle Unlimited. So for Addicted to You, I ended up giving this 3.5 stars and 3 on Spice because, again, Lily is addicted to sex. There is a lot of it throughout the book. It's not super descriptive, but it's there. So I had to put that rating pretty high. The next book I read in this vlog was Reckless by Elsie Silver, which is the 4th book in the Chestnut Springs series. And that follows Winter, who is Summer's older sister. Summer was the love interest in the first book, and then Theo, who is Rhett, the male love interest from the first book's apprentice in the bull riding circuit. And we kind of get a taste of them at the end of Powerless. They meet at the family's house for dinner when Winter comes back to town to try to fix her relationship with Summer because of things that have happened in her life. And Theo's visiting Rhett. And Theo is just, I love him. He was just, from the start, he was just trying to get under her skin. He loved that she was fiery. He loved that she talked back to him. And it was adorable. He is the cutest thing ever. The beginning of the book starts off, basically they hook up. I don't think it's a surprise. It's a surprise pregnancy trope. It's on the back of the book. She gets pregnant, and it goes from there. But Theo is literally the cutest thing. I loved him. He's older than he seems. There is an age gap. It's not huge. She's only like 2 or 3 years older than him. But she acts like it's a huge deal. He's like, I don't see what the problem is here. But he's adorable. The story's cute. Winter is so much deeper, and There's so much more going on than everybody realizes. They think she's just like a nasty, mean person and she doesn't want to deal with anybody, but there's just so much heartbreak and pain that she's gone through in her life between her and Summer, and she just wants to have a good relationship with her sister, and she just wants to be a good mother. And I think that you definitely feel more for her in this book than you do based on how she was described in the previous 3. And I'm giving this a 3.75 as well, and 2 on the spice. Then I read A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. This is her newest release, which is the first in the Saga of the Unfated. It is a Norse kind of retelling where this woman is basically sold to this, they call them like Jarls, and they're basically like high up military guys, and he's trying to like fight to be a leader, and her husband, who is a jerk, sells her to this guy, betrays her, and like basically sells her to this guy to get rid of her. And she doesn't want to be this guy's wife because she'd be like his second wife, and she has like a power that they've been looking for forever, and she's kept it a secret for so long. But then her husband, who kind of figured it out because he followed her the one night, that's why he betrays her. And then this Jarl wants her because he wants to show that he found her and he wants the power, and so he wants her to be his second wife. And there's a big old messy thing between him and his first wife and her, and then his son, because that's her actual love interest in this book. I loved this. I don't know why. It was, again, like a messy, weird situation, but so entertaining, so fast-paced, different. I have not read like a Norse retelling book before, so I really enjoyed this, and it is obviously going to be a series, so I'm interested to see where the story goes from where this ended. But the dynamic between her and Bjorn was just because he's been touched by the gods, so he has powers as well. So they're like a formidable duo. And then his dad's just an absolute jerk. They do have a little bit of a weird dynamic too, because he does not like his dad, but it's also his dad. So he doesn't want to betray his father. Weird. But I did enjoy this. This is considered fantasy. It was a relatively new release. It was my March book of the month, so I think it came out sometime in March. I ended up giving this 4 stars and 2 spice, and I am very excited for the next book to come out. I don't know when. I think probably sometime next year it will come out, but I will definitely be picking that up when it does. Then I picked up Expiration Dates by Rebecca Searle. This was actually my book club's pick for the month, and this is magical realism about this girl, Daphne, who receives these letters every time she starts dating someone or meets somebody that she's eventually going to date that has their name on it and the amount of time that they're going to be together, hence the expiration date. So the book opens with her getting ready to go on a blind date with a guy named Jake, and when she got the card with his name on it, it didn't have a time frame on it, so she thinks he's the one. And the book kind of goes through a few of her relationships. She has her best friend her best friend is Hugo, and he was a previous relationship, and he's the only one that knows about the expiration date. Like, nobody else in her life really knows about it. And he knows her other secret that you find out later on in the book, and he's, again, the only person that she's dated that ever knew that. And they have like this weird dynamic together, and you see her trying to cope with, okay, this is my life because I have this problem and this is how it's affecting it, but I know that this guy's supposed to be the love of my life because doesn't have an expiration date. What does that mean? Does that mean that we're never gonna, like, we're gonna get married, we're gonna, like, be together, whatever? This deals a lot with, like, fate versus choices. That's, like, the big underlying meaning of this book. I did not love this because of the way that the book went. I think it had so much potential. It could have been so good, but it fell so flat for me at the end. And I did not love our main character because of some of the choices that she made. But anyway, still an interesting magical realism book. We were pretty mixed when we talked about it as a book club, so some people really enjoyed it, some people had the same kinds of feelings that I did, and that seems to even be what, like, the Goodreads reviews kind of say about it. But I did give this a 3 because I didn't hate it. It made me mad at the end because I didn't like how it ended. And half on the spice. Next up is City of Glass by Cassandra Clare, which is the 3rd book in the Mortal Instruments series. This is in my continuing series vlog, which will not be out by the time this comes out, but it will be coming out soon. And this is, again, the 3rd book of the Mortal Instruments, so I can't really talk about what happens. It picks up after City of Ashes and still follows the same characters that the first 3 books did. And I can see why, because I'm, like, reading this in the order that Cassandra Clare prefers people read it. And the next book is the first book in, like, I forget what it's called, but it's the Red Scrolls of Magic. It's the Magnus and Alec duology, and I can see why that's the next book. So I'm interested to see how I enjoy reading her books in the correct order by her, because obviously she's the best one to tell everybody that, because then after that book is The Infernal Devices, I believe. Yeah, I think it's The Infernal Devices. It's the Clockwork series. That one is after the Red Scrolls of Magic, and then I go back and finish the rest of the Mortal Instruments, which is the only books I've read in this series. So I'm very excited for that. This was 4 stars, half spice, best one so far in my reread of this series, and I can't remember what happens in the second half of the series because of how this ended. I didn't think that what happened in this book happened as early in the series as it does, because we still have half of it left. But definitely picking up on the action, on the relationships, on the whole storyline. I'm excited to see what my brain doesn't remember from the second half when I continue reading this book. Then I did my 24-hour readathon. So that kind of cut into the middle of my series vlog, so this one will be out. The 24-hour readathon will be out by the time this video is out, so you can watch that vlog. And the first book I read in that was The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. I don't have that book physically. I gave it back to my sister because it was hers. But this was their newest release. It's about Anna and Liam, who got married in college because they needed cheap housing and they had to get family housing in order to do that, so they had to get married to live there. And she was actually friends with his little brother, so that's how they met. They never really got to know each other when they were married. And then he left after his program was done, and she went on her own way because she kind of changed her path. And 3 years later, he has to go back and like beg her to go with him to his sister's wedding because they never actually divorced, and he has been lying to his family for years saying that he's married to this woman and that they're too busy and that's why they can't come visit, and they've never met her. And his parents kind of are forcing him to finally bring her. The reason they never divorced was because he found out when they got married that that's what started his inheritance clause from his grandfather, because he comes from this like supermarket billionaire family, and that's what started to give him money from his inheritance. But he has to be married to her for 5 years, and it has to be under like no false pretenses, which they kind of got married under. And she doesn't know any of this, so they go on vacation together to his sister's wedding, and they're seeing each other after so many years, and she is like freaking hilarious. I loved Anna because she is the opposite of his family in every freaking possible way, and she does not care what she says to anybody, and she is just a spitfire, and I loved her and their dynamic. And you're really dealing with Liam kind of going through all of this crap with his family and how they don't accept him because he didn't want to go down the path that they wanted him to go down, and she's trying to say like, I'm going to be in your corner, like I'm here for you. And obviously through all of that they fall in love, and there's a big messy ending, but then it's a romance, so obviously it ends okay. I really enjoyed this book. It was funny, it was fast-paced, it was interesting, it was different, and I think I would recommend this probably more than any of their other books that I've read. Yeah, I'd have to say this was probably my number one out of the books that I've read for them. I gave this 4 stars and 3.5 on the spice because it was, and 2.5 on the spice because it was pretty spicy, but I very much enjoyed this book. Fun summer read because it does take place in like Indonesia or something, and they're in one of those like bungalow things that's over the ocean. It was very paradisey, hence the Paradise Problem. Then I read Off the Grid by Kay Bromberg, and this is an F1 romance between Camilla and Spencer. Camilla is the daughter of an F1 team's owner, and Spencer is an F2 driver at the beginning that's trying to make his way into the F1 circuit, and when a spot opens up on Camilla's family's team, Spencer gets it, and they meet each other previously, and they do not have a good first meeting. Like, she hates him. He's just a big flirt and doesn't understand, like, why she took everything so seriously. So there's this, like, weird dynamic between the two of them because she just was like, I think you're a jerk. I don't want to deal with you. And he's like, oh, come on, I was kidding. You're pretty. You're attractive. Let's hook up kind of thing. And he's basically just trying to break her down. But she has things that happened to her in the past that make her not want to trust drivers or anyone in the F1 circuit, and she really just wants to go work for the family's other business, which is like olive oil or something in Italy. But she does go up to help her dad for the year because he does want her to take over the team, and she gives him like 1 year to convince her to do it, and that's when she meets Spencer, and everything goes from there. So it's slightly enemies to lovers, it's a little bit close proximity, a little bit forbidden. It was fun. Once you got through all the F1 jargon at the beginning and the story actually started, I really did enjoy this. I gave it 3.5 stars and 2.5 on spice. I think it's part of a series too, but I probably won't continue it. A lot of the books I get in my romance reveal box are like interconnected standalones, but I don't really ever continue them. Then I read If I Asked You to Stay by Brianna Remus. This follows Willow and Johnny, who dated when they were in high school because they met via an orphanage that they were both living in because Willow's mother had her young and basically was disowned by her family, so she had to give Willow up, and Johnny's parents were like drug addicts and were not allowed to have him. So they met and they dated throughout high school, and they really loved each other, and they both had obviously their trauma in their pasts. And she finds out who the family is that gave her up, who still lived in the same small town as her in high school. So there's a lot of betrayal in that part for her, and then something happens with that that's very tragic. And then Johnny ends up leaving her on her 18th birthday, or like around her 18th birthday, to go join the military. So then she leaves the town when she's done with high school because there's nothing left for her there, goes to build her own dreams. In the beginning of the book, brings her back from Nashville to help her. She's living with her one friend who has like a small business in that town, while she deals with the fact that she's just been given the inheritance from the grandmother that she never knew because the grandmother passed away. So she has to come deal with the estate, sign all the papers to get the inheritance money so that she can go live her own dreams, and ends up running into Johnny because she didn't know he was back in town. And there's a lot of miscommunication between them about what actually happened in the past and what's actually happening now. Again, messy. It's a romance novel. This was interesting. It definitely was like slow building. There's a little bit of like a mystery crime aspect towards the end that was interesting about like her diving into the past of her family and what happened with her mother. And I enjoyed this. It was just a little bit too, I don't know how I want to say that, but like their relationship built too quickly, and it was like too easy for them to forgive each other, which isn't as realistic as you think it would be. But romance books are like, they straddle a line between realistic and unrealistic. So I ended up giving this 3 stars and 2 spice. Then I read The Hookup Type by Brittany Wilson. And this was a trip down memory lane to college that I never wanted to take. So basically we have Macy and we have Jackson, and they meet at the beginning of their junior year of college and become friends because they didn't have a class together. But he is like a playboy, just hooks up with girls, does not believe in relationships. She just wants to have what she calls a fun dip, which is a relationship that doesn't mean anything. She just wants someone she can call when she's drunk that she wants to hook up with for that year. And thinks that it may be Jackson, but then the one night that they're actually out drinking together and they go to hook up, he stops them because he doesn't want to ruin their friendship. And then she goes on to find somebody that will just like hook up with her when she wants. And it ends up kind of like causing their dynamic to flip like dramatically, and it causes weird things between them. And then they're still friends, but there's still that like underlying tension between them because they have deeper feelings for each other that they both don't want to admit. And this goes on for 400 pages, and it was 200 pages too long, and it was just messy and dramatic and very immature. And I don't know how all of them don't have STDs, but it was just a lot of sex. Everybody was sleeping with everybody. It was weird. A lot of drinking, a lot of partying. That's pretty much the entire book. So I ended up giving this 2.75 and 3.5 on spice. If that sounds like something you'd like, you'd probably love this. But if you are my age and way much over this part of your life, maybe not something that you would enjoy reading. And then the final book from that vlog was The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. And this is the book that precedes the rule book in her little sports universe that she has. And this is a closed door romance between Bree and Nathan. And they were best friends when they were in high school and went their separate ways because Bree had an accident and she was a ballerina and she ended up having an accident that changed her life trajectory. And then Nathan went off to school and then ended up being drafted by the NFL. They both end up meeting again later on in their lives in LA, which is where he's playing now, and she has a studio. And they pick up right where they left off. They're best friends. They know everything about each other. They spend a lot of time together. She's that friend that everybody that he dates hates because he will always pick her over the girlfriend. And one night they're out together celebrating one of his teammates' birthdays, and she runs her mouth off to a reporter without knowing because she was a little bit too much into the tequila that night. And from that, they end up fake dating because his publicist and manager think that would be a good way to like help boost his image. And it was very cute. It was very like, without her being famous, like a very Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce romance kind of thing. It almost felt like you were reading a little bit about their romance, but obviously different because Bree's not Taylor Swift. I enjoyed it. It was adorable. Their dynamic was cute. The way they could pick on each other because they knew so much about each other was adorable. I loved that it was closed door because it was really more about their relationship emotionally than it was physically, but the tension was still there. It was done so well. This is the first Sarah Adams book that I have physically read. I listened to one in Rome and and Practice Makes Perfect, and I loved both of those books, and I'll probably end up buying them to physically read them at some point, but I figured I'd start with this series since I hadn't really known anything about it. If you like a cute, fun friends to lovers, which is my favorite trope, fake dating, my second favorite trope, I gave this a 4.25 and half on Spice. Then I read Ignite Me by Tahereh Mafi. This is the third book in the Shatter Me series, which was supposed to originally be a trilogy, so this was supposed to be the final book, and this just picks up where we left off with Juliet, Warner, Aaron, and Adam at the end of the second book, and this was my most highly rated of them so far. So far it was my favorite because I liked the dynamics between the relationships, good and bad, that we found out during this and the things that came out between the characters, and the storyline really picked up and it was more active in this, although I feel like it built up to a lot to have a very short, quick climax at the end, and I can see why this was supposed to be the final book, but I don't know what's going to happen in the second part. So we'll see how that ends up working out. Then I read The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, which is the third and final book in the Cruel Prince Folk of the Air trilogy. And if you've seen my other vlogs that I've done and my other wrap-ups I've done on this series, I don't love the Cruel Prince trilogy. It was not my favorite. I did not like Cardan. But this book really got me. I shouldn't have had to wait till the third book to really like the characters or like the series, but it did get me at the end. So this follows Jude and Cardan and the events that happened after the first two books. And the ending of this book had me like actually emotional, so it finally did get to me. But it was a slightly chaotic ending again. It was weird. There was a very weird ending. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. I did not see what happened coming. I gave this 4 stars and 1.5 on the Spice. If you want more thoughts on it, again, this was in my series reading vlog. Then I read Hopeless, which is the final book in the Chestnut Spring series, and that follows Beau and Bailey. Beau is the brother that was in the military and had some tragic things happen to him in some of the previous books, so you're following him from there out. And Bailey is like a 22-year-old bartender in the town who has a very like not well liked family, so she has to deal with all of the stuff that happens from that. And Beau tries to help her with her image by saying let's fake date and we'll get fake engaged so that like your image gets helped and my family gets off my back about things that happen that I'm not happy about. So it is a fake dating. It is an age gap because she's 22 and I think he's 35, so that was a weird age gap, but I didn't think about it until they talked about it, so it wasn't too big of a deal. I gave this book 4 stars and 3 on the Spice. It was not my favorite, I don't think, in the series. I want to say Reckless or Heartless was probably my favorite, and which are actually my 2 least favorite tropes, so that is weird. But I did enjoy it. I liked it more than I thought I would because a lot of people didn't really like this book. I enjoyed it. I liked Bailey. I liked Beau's dynamic with her. I feel like you really got to see him more than you had in any of the previous books. So I did enjoy that. And then I finished out the month with Glass Sword by Victoria Aveyard, which is the second book in the Red Queen series, Quartet. I picked up again where the first book left off, and you get more of the story. It goes more, there's more action in this book. There's more of like the war and what's actually happening on the front lines in this book, and there's a power shift in the dynamic between some of your main characters. You've got Mare, who's still your main character, and Cal and Maven, and the dynamic change between the 3 of them in this book is a lot different from what we see in the first book, so that was very interesting. This book was sad. This book was very detailed. There was a lot of world building in this book, but I did enjoy it. I'm excited to see where the rest of it goes because I don't know, and I haven't really looked really much into what's going to happen in the rest of the books, but I did enjoy this. It was a little hard for me to get into because I had to remember a lot of the things that happened in the first book, but I did enjoy this. I gave it 4 stars and 1 Spice. And then finally, I'm just going to touch quickly on the fact I soft DNF'd Jade City in my Kindle for a Week vlog because I just wasn't in the mood for like intense world building, high magic system in a fantasy book right now. I just wasn't ready to start something like that. So I may go back to it, we'll see, but right now it was a soft DNF. So that is all the books I read in May. We'll see what June brings. It is going to be a busier month for me, so I'll probably not read as many books as I read this month, but I have some exciting ones ahead. And I thank you if you've made it this far. If you like my content, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you all in the next video.